Central banking. Preparation for this video has revealed a regrettable omission. The preceding materials have offered many logical points at which to place an obvious but significant truism. To correct that deficiency here, we note that analysis of the economy as a steady-state system altogether obviates the functions of money. A true equilibrium would imply that we would always be consuming today what was consumed yesterday, and working today as we did yesterday. There would be no recall of or anticipation of any other procedures. Once prices had found their equilibrium levels in any such system, there would never arise any impulse that might change them. So the same amounts of money would always be changing hands, as physical transactions are incessantly repeated. Money would thereby be revealed as redundant, and redundant things soon fall out of use. Without its dynamism, the economy would hold little interest for the inquiring mind. Hence our title as the San Francisco Model of Economic Adjustment, by which we assert that the principal obligation of economic theory is to emulate the economy's stable adjustments to its ever-changing boundary conditions. Our video on fractional reserve banking conveyed that fiat money is essential to releasing an economic dynamic through which an economy resting at an optimal state advances to a yet higher state when more favorable boundary conditions allow. Returning to the fanciful tale through which this point was made, the steady states of equilibrium have now passed through another sustained period in which not much of anything has happened. The banker Exnihilo has begun to miss the greater passive income he had enjoyed during the period of his contract with Entrepreneurial. Seeing no replacement for Entrepreneurial in the offing, he set about inducing another transient via an appeal to authority. Introducing himself to the SSofE's monarch, Exnihilo declared, "I see by your crown and scepter that you are in need of money," knowing the reply would be, "Yes, always." Keeping one's crown and scepter always involves a difficult trade-off. One taxes to a point of social unrest, and those exactions must be sufficient to pay for enough police to quell the unrest or all is lost. It scarcely leaves sufficient funds to make mischief in nearby realms, appease a mistress or two, or even buy a little renown from the scribbling vermin. 'Twas ever thus in my unhappy trade. Thereupon Exnihilo unfolded his plan. His bank was to be recreated as the sovereign bank of the SSofE, and monarchs' accounts would be kept there. Taxes required of the SSofE would be deposited in the sovereign bank, and royal expenditures would be withdrawn therefrom. When monarch inquired as to how his royal fisc might be enhanced by merely changing the domicile of his swag, Exnihilo sprang his trap. The agency of his sovereign bank was such that royal expenditures would no longer be limited by taxes deposited. When monarch needed money, the desired sum would appear in his checking account, an act of prestidigitation accomplished by nothing more than offsetting accounting entries, one side of which would be a new asset for a sovereign bank. This asset would have to be serviced, as only performing assets are seen as banking the enforceable claims against sovereign bank, and such claims would naturally arise from those receiving payments from monarch. Interest on the SSofE's sovereign debt would be paid from taxes, the amount thereof becoming the only factor limiting the size of the assets that might be created for sovereign bank in exchange for refreshing the royal account. By such means, sovereign bank would be creating the realm's money, which monarch would simply spend into existence. As ever-expanding uses were found for monarch's newly liberated funding potential, there ensued many compounding inflationary transients of the sort touched off by Entrepreneurial's earlier innovation. Exnihilo again prospered, but the average citizen of the SSofE did not, as their sacrifice on behalf of monarch was not rewarded by the introduction of any new economic instruments that might ease their labor. Monarch's uses for his new money being simply different in kind from those of Entrepreneurial. And neither did Monarch have Entrepreneurial's instinct to liquidate his debt to Exnihilo in order to pass his realm on to a new generation unencumbered. Growth in the royal account required ever more taxation in order to sustain interest payments on the SSofE's sovereign debt. Should these payments cease, sovereign banks' offsetting asset would come to be viewed as non-performing, making sovereign bank, Monarch, and the entire SSofE insolvent. This dynamic became self-inducing, as more taxes had to be raised in order to provide ever more earnings to support an ever-increasing sovereign debt. In the fullness of time, the police came to doubt that Monarch would ever be able to pay their wages, which by then had fallen into arrears, or to continue paying for their children's orthodontia, let alone continue making adequate provision for the policemen's retirements. The police thereupon became insufficient to extract taxes, or even to defend the economic activity through which the SSofE earned enough to pay taxes while keeping body and soul together. There our tale ends, but we do not know quite how, for reports from the former SSofE no longer arrive. Such tales will alarm the greater number of people who do not know how their money came to be, and will have many agitating for an alternate to practices that can be so easily corrupted in secret. This tale has its moral. While money is created of nothing, it matters greatly that money should be created for something.